All right, let me get back to you. Hi, everyone. It's Sir Rithkin from Montier, and I'm here tonight with His Royal Majesty Ivar the Black from Avacal. This is part of my 50 Duke interview, and Ivar will be a Duke in about 4 days. So that'll be super cool. So we usually start these things with sort of like an origin story, like how you found the SCA, where, when, and that kind of thing. So if you want to start there, that would be awesome.
Sure. So I was a D&D kid, as so many of us were back in the day, and it was probably around 1987 that I first saw the SCA at a gaming convention. But I didn't approach them because I was too shy, and I just watched this, fantastic array of fighters do their thing in front of me, and I was pretty intrigued. But it would have been a couple of years later where I saw them again at the same kind of convention. This time, I was a little less shy because there was a pretty girl behind the counter. So I put my name down on a piece of paper to be called and contacted if I wanted more information, and they called and contacted me. So we met in a basement where in the same pretty girl's basement, actually, as it turns out. And I went with my best friend at the time, and they told us all kinds of fantastic things about knights and dukes and armor and crafting and heraldry and pageantry. And so we were absolutely dumbfounded. So we were sort of hooked right out of the gate. And then there was the matter of this girl, frankly, who I was very interested in getting to know more.
This has to be your wife.
Well, as it turns out, we never dated that girl.
Okay. All right.
At least not.
Sorry, I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Well, we'll get there. So we ended up becoming fast friends, and we did all kinds of things in the SCA. I was new in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Didn't pick up fighting right away. Was a rapier fighter a little bit and that kind of stuff. But eventually, the girl and we sort of parted ways. The interesting thing, though, is that about a decade later, I had stuck around in the SCA. She had moved off, done other things. And a decade later, I was in a different city, and I was homesick one day, and I got a call on the telephone. She had been looking through the phone book in this different city that she happened to be in, happened to come across my name, called me to see if I was the same guy. And yeah, we went for coffee. And then 2 years later, I made her Princess of Avacal. And that later on that same summer, we got married. So that's
your
my origin story is, and she's currently my queen and will be my queen forever. So
wow.
Yeah, that's my origin story in the SCA is the first experience, the first time I got courage enough to actually sort of talk to these people. It was because of her, and it's been all because of her ever since.
That's super cool. So what drew you into fencing as opposed to heavy fighting?
There wasn't a lot of action around heavy fighting in this shire at that time. There was interesting fencing. There was some fighting and that kind of thing, but it wasn't as the skill level here wasn't as great as it was elsewhere. And we were like, I was a kid. I was 15, 16. Not a whole lot of money to rub together to travel to other places. It was actually I recall the day that I thought maybe I should try this out. I watched the fighters coming back from a war. I forget what war it was. It was local. And my best friend who I'd gone and we joined the SCA together, he fought right away. And he was coming back with this tall goofball guy named Vic Vikingson off the field. And so I kind of fell into step beside them. And Vic looked over at me and said, you're a pretty big guy. How come you don't fight? And I didn't have a good answer for it. And so I said, well, maybe I'll give it a go. And just, it was, I just love it. It really is the thing that drives me in this game. I like to make things, and I like to craft, and I like to speak, and I like to do lots of things, but fighting is where my heart and joy in this organization is. It really is the greatest thing that I've ever done.
So who is your friend that you started with?
His name is Haskell Thorkelson. I don't know if he stuck around. He never much cared for the rigorous travel and the sort of political game of becoming a knight and, doing all of the, being on your best behavior, that kind of thing. Not that he's a bad guy, but he just didn't care for that aspect of it. So he is every bit the fighter I am, if not more. We fight, and he probably beats me more often than I beat him. But he's recently come to the idea that maybe I would want to give this a go. So he's squire to Arnsbjorn right now, and
oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll see how it all turns out.
So I'll probably meet him then.
I expect you will. He's been down to the fight practice that you guys do down in, where it is, I forget exactly. I've never been. Yes, it must be that Spokane practice.
We do like a regional thing there. It started as a family practice, and then we thought, well, if we're going to do it here, we should invite everyone, because that would be kind of exclusionary. So
I'll get there. One of these days I'll get down there.
You should. It's super fun. That's one of my favorite things that we do, because it's all about fighting and then all about hanging out with your friends and barbecuing afterwards or whatever,
sounds like all of the best parts of the SCA right there.
Yes, it is. So tell me about how you got your armor and how you fell in love with fighting.
It really was a mishmash of everything we could do. I was never much interested in fabrication or like making things when I was a kid. My dad was a heavy equipment operator and a fabricator and a handy guy. And I remember when I was a kid, he looked over at me one day and said, "We're going to make a handyman out of you yet, son, honestly." And I never cared for it. But once I got into the SCA, I needed to learn how to dish and how to weld and how to make stuff. And Dad looked pretty askance at the whole medieval thing. He didn't really get it, but it got me into his shop building stuff. And that he was fine with that. So we made some awful looking armor back in those days. Like some absolutely, I probably got, here we go. So I'm in this really ugly, tiny shield, giant helmet. Like really, and all that stuff is borrowed, frankly. I'll get a little closer there. I'm the guy that's leaning over, falling over backwards.
That's you in the red?
That's me in the red. In borrowed gear, frankly, because we borrowed a lot of stuff back then. There was a fella here. His name was Thorkel Randolphson, and he was a squire. We had never seen a squire before in Sagala-Hundis, so he was a big deal. And he knew lots of stuff. He knew how to make stuff, and he taught us leatherworking and stained glass and all kinds of interesting things. So, and he sort of helped a lot of us get going in our gear. So, yeah, I remember some of the terrible things we used to build. My dad, of course, was this heavy equipment operator. He had lots of steel around the shop, but it wasn't the kind of steel that we needed. So the first helmet we ever made, Haskell, had 1/2-inch bars in the front. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing. Like, he put it on, it would clunk, and it was like it went in the scrap bin because it was utterly unusable. But we were all excited about it because it was the first helmet we'd ever made. So yeah, we just basically found whatever armor we could cobble together, and it got sort of better and better as the years went on. I was up like every weekend before the week before the event. We were up till 2 a.m. every night in the shop, banging out some new thing. Like there was always something going on.
Cool. So, did you guys have a practice up there?
We practiced as often as we could. It was always a sort of a weekly kind of thing. We very much we were a group of young, scrappy, and hungry fighters, and really had to use each other to gain skill because the SC was not coming to us. We are in a remote area, in a remote part of the world, frankly, SCA wise anyway. So everything is at least 8 hours away from me, except for Mergen Wood, which is 3 hours away. So we very much had to, and back in those days, we weren't traveling, we didn't have a lot of money. So going to places like Clinton War was a very, very big deal and an 18-hour drive. So it was a big commitment to do that kind of thing. So yeah, we would practice as much as we could with each other, and I would learn a shot and I'd use that shot to destroy all of my friends, and they would learn how to block it. They'd learn the counter, they'd use it to destroy me, and we would sort of edge each other up as best we could. And then we get to the guys up in Saskatoon, the Albrechts, the Vicks, and those guys, and they were a little more advanced in the fighting than we were at the time, and they very much brought us along. They started coming down here quite a lot, and that's really where the bonds that we all have as friends all built, because we would get together as often as we could with the guys from Saskatoon, guys from Calgary, if they'd come out, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it really was a thing where we would have to use each other to get better.
When did you decide that you wanted to go on to the path of knighthood?
I don't know that it was ever a conscious decision. It was the inevitable goal of the love that I had for fighting. And it really was like, I love the camaraderie. I love the physical aspect of it. I love the challenge of it. And so if I was going to take that to its absolute furthest goal, knighthood was a step along that way. I looked at knights and thought, who's that guy? Who's that guy? I don't know. And I was shy, so it was difficult to go talk to these guys. But it was easy to ask them to fight because that's the thing that I love to do. So that just became an organic thing. I don't ever recall thinking I'm going to be a knight. It was always sort of a goal, right? Since I knew about it, it was a goal, but there was never a moment where I said, I'm making my bid starting now. It was really just if I want to love this thing and I want to experience all the aspects of it, then I'm going to have to go to places like Seattle and Vancouver and Spokane and like the places that were far away and experience different fighters. And so that was the easiest way to do that.
Cool. So did you squire to someone eventually?
It did. I first man at arms to a guy named Kedrick Van Keizersheil. He's a local guy. He taught me everything he knew about fighting, but I was very much a sponge and I was looking for more and looking for more. And I had talked a bunch of times. I ended up going down to Pennsic one year with Vic and Thorwolf, if you know Thorwolf from up in Thierry. And we were driving Rorik stuff down. Rorik was king of Antir at the time. And so it was probably that Pennsic where I realized that was my guy. Like he was everything I wanted to be. He was excellent in front of a crowd. He was well spoken. He was an absolute killer fighter. And I thought, maybe one day we'll sort that out. And so we talked a bit here and there. And the day that Albrecht and Vic got knighted, he squired me. And Vic was angry at him because Vic was going to break the year-long tradition of not taking a squire. He wanted to squire me that day. But Rorik was my guy. Vic was my buddy, but Rorik was my guy.
That's cool. So how far away did Rorik live from you?
He was, he still lives in Edmonton, which is an 8-hour drive. And he always had the gift that he gave to me, or one of the many gifts he bestowed upon me, was just get to Edmonton. And it's a bit of a weird thing because I have to go sort of northwest to go to Edmonton, and then it was always straight south. But he said, as long as you can get to me, I'll take care of everything else. You can hop in, I'll take care of your food and your lodging, and you can sleep in my tent if you don't have one, and everything else. Just get to Edmonton. You can come with me everywhere. And that guy traveled like crazy. So I watched your interview with Albrecht. He talked about Rorik's truck. I spent a lot of days in that truck. A lot of days. Like in the back by Gunther, who was my squire brother, and I almost froze to death going over those mountains. We thought we were going to die. Like you've met Gunther. I'm not a cuddly guy with that kind of human, and we were cuddling for warmth because it was bad news, but we got to go to events. We got there. So that was what was important.
How did you guys train at a distance like that, but really before the internet?
Before the internet, exactly. Well, I talked about how we used each other as a bit of a stepladder. I'm a big fan, and I did a lot before I realized I knew what I was doing, but I'm a big fan of visualization and thinking about how shots land and thinking about how fights move and change. And so that goes on in my head an awful lot. So it was going on back in those days. There was an awful lot of physical training as well. When I lived in Scala-Hunt, is where I am now. I didn't train as much. I moved to Saskatoon, Mergenwood in the early 90s. And that's really when I started to take off. That's when I started. I mean, we wore a trench around that pell pole that was stuck in the backyard. We practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And it wasn't a chore. It wasn't I got to do my workout. It was, I'm sad, so I'm going to go practice in the pell. I'm happy, I'm going to go practice in the pell. I'm tired, but I can't sleep. I got to go practice in the pell, right? It was just the thing that we did. So that poor thing, I beat the snot out of it and just tried to do my best and learn. And I had a lot of mentors down there, and so it was excellent. it was a good time for me.
Was that the same time period that Vic and Albrecht were there?
I was there. I missed Albrecht by probably we might have overlapped for about a month or two before he moved off to Edmonton. He still taught me a ton because we'd go to Borealis quite a lot. Borealis is only 5 hours from Saskatoon, so that's an easy drive to make. I saw him a lot. I learned an awful lot from Vic. I learned an awful lot from a guy named Taras of Kiev, who
I know who that is.
You know who that is? Yeah, he's got some infamy for sure. But if I had to invent the kind of fighter I am, if I could cram all three of those guys into one guy, I think that's who I am as a fighter. I took various aspects from all those guys. They taught me a ton, and I owe a lot to them, honestly.
Cool. So I think I was at the event that you got knighted at. It was a Farragut crown. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So tell me about your road to knighthood and if that was a surprise. I think it was a surprise. I think I remember you being very surprised.
Oh man, it's one of my fondest memories. To talk about the road to knighthood, we were like SCA and travel are synonymous with me. If you want to go to an event, you take Friday off and you travel. That's what you do if you're from here. So we humped it over those mountains so many times on my, what I would call my path, because it was, you had to get out there, right? You had to get out there, and you had to go out there as often as you could. You had to make a big splash. You had to, so you drive all night, you get out of the car, you fight, you have a nap, you go party, because the party was part of it. The party was, be in their face and entertaining and active and, memorable, right? Because you were only there every few months, like if you get to every crown, every coronation, that's only 4 times a year. So like, you got to get there as often as you can. So that really was the hard part. I don't know that I could do it now, not as a father raising a family. I spent every red cent that my bank account would allow on travel to get out there. And I thought I was doing pretty good. I was getting out there frequently. I was winning things. I was making a splash. I knew all the guys. And then in an ill-conceived notion, we were out of Quad War one year, and this was back when you could jump over a fence and get into the castle. There wasn't walls on the one side. And I got on my hands and knees and I said, everybody go, just jump on me and go over, and we're going to teach the castle that way. And so I put the whole army of our side over it. And then of course there was no one for me to jump on the back and jump over. So I thought, well, I read comic books. I know Captain America. I can do this. So I took a big old run at it, and I planted my shield on the fence, and I was going to kick my legs over it. In my head, it was going to be amazing. What happened was my shield skipped off, and I fell on my shoulder, and I dislocated it really badly, like posterior, in a really ugly way. And I promise you, I'm not making this up. The first thing I thought when I hit the ground and heard the crunch was, there it goes. There goes my shot at knighthood, because I don't know if I'll ever fight again, because I knew it was bad. And so that Farragut crown that you're talking about, I was still injured, and I wasn't going to go, but I thought, well, got to be in their face, got to be there, and that kind of thing. So we went down, and Davin, we went to, I wasn't going to go to court because, well, who cares, right? Like, I was a little bit dejected that I couldn't fight, and I was sad. And it was funny because the knights were giving me a hard time, in a loving kind of way. Like, they'd go to square off, oh, you didn't bring your armor, Ivar. And I was, yeah, okay, whatever. So when I went to court, and Davin called up the knights, and I was like, oh, who's going to be knighted? Because I love a good knighting. And he called Ivar the Black, and I will never in my entire life forget the sound and the vision of Davin saying the words Ivar the Black. And I promise, my first thought was, there's another Ivar the Black? Like, that's amazing. What are the odds, right? And so I sat there looking for this other fella to see if he looked like me, at least. And I was with Morgan the Unknown, and she looks over at me and she says, go! And she elbows me in the ribs, and I'm like, okay, I guess I better go. And yeah, that's the last I remember of whatever was said or however it went. It was all just a complete blur, because it was an utter and complete shock. So I wouldn't change a thing about it.
But
And
you
it
were
was, but he
knighted,
put,
you were knighted right then, right?
no, he put me in
Oh, no.
vigil.
Vigil, okay. Vigil.
Put me in vigil, and then I was knighted in Morganwood later on. So that would have been September. I was knighted in October in Morganwood at their big anniversary event. And Davin couldn't make it. He couldn't. So something had happened in their world, and I don't exactly know what happened there. But Groa could come, and so my knighting was made by Groa and Rorik, and it was one of the greatest things that I've ever taken part in. I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Super special.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I of course everyone's worried about the buffet, and I thought I don't know what's going to happen here because Groa's the kind of person that's just going to want to do it,
Right.
and I didn't know if I could win because she was either going to knock me unconscious or the guys were going to tease me about, oh, you got buffeted by a girl and all that. Like, it was just, I was like, what's going to happen? I was a young, stupid kid. I didn't know how it was going to go. So I just went with it. And there's video of it if you Google up the Knighting of Ivar the Black, you can see how she goes to do the buffet and Rorik steps forward. She says, let this be the last blow you accept and answer. And Rorik steps forward to do it. And she puts a hand on his chest. And, being a good knight, he bows his head and lets the crown go forward. And she comes and she goes to smack me, and she throws her arm around me and she bends me over and she kisses me in front of the whole crowd. And the crowd goes nuts, like crazy. It was an amazing, I didn't know what was happening because I was all tense and waiting, and then now I'm getting kissed. And it was amazing. And then she stands me up, and Rorik comes up to me and gives me, and I'm gonna brag a little bit, what I consider to be the best buffet that's ever been delivered. It honestly was. He hit me perfectly, and it was great, and I didn't fall over, and it was a big hug, and it was a big moment. It was great. The video is super grainy, but it's worth your time.
And was he the one that touched her shoulder or whatever when she dubbed you and everything?
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. What a story, and like how unique, right?
It was. I wouldn't change a thing about it. There wasn't, in those days, at least for me, there wasn't a big vigil and people speaking, and there was, like, my vigil was really just, okay, wait till we can get to knight you in your hometown. But there wasn't a big to do. There wasn't a night before thing that there was no sitting in a tent and receiving advice. It really was just us hanging out. I went and had a few drinks with Rorik the night before. I asked him, are you going to give me the buffet? He says, well, it's up to the queen. I said, if you do, you're going to take your rings off? He said, no. So that was kind of relationship we had.
Did he take them off?
He cut me open, only a little bit. So I don't think he did.
No.
The entire time that the night when it was going, I had to break with him as a squire. So I had to give him my squire belt. A big flowery speech planned, and I couldn't get it out because I'm a bit of an emotional guy. It was a big emotional moment for me. I owe that guy an awful lot. And so I just sort of thrust it at him. But for the rest of the ceremony, he took that belt and he wrapped it around his right hand, and he was tightening it. It was making a big show of everyone. And everyone was like, oh, is he going to hit him with the belt? And Rorik's left-handed. So it didn't matter, but he was making a big show of tightening it around his right hand. And it was all part of the pageantry. That guy had a gift for pageantry and drawing the crowd in, and it showed that night for sure.
Somebody just linked the YouTube thing. I'm gonna have to watch it after.
It's fun. It's a good buffet. I'm proud of it.
Nice. So did you get any cool like lineage regalia or?
I got a set of spurs from my brothers in my household. None of them were knights, but they went together and they found a set of spurs for me. I got Elbric's belt, which meant a lot to me, and drew a little turtle on the tip of the belt. And it was like, there's nothing special about the belt. It was just a strip of white leather. It went around Elbric at the time, who was a bigger man than he is now. Right, so it was long belt. And it was a hard day when I had to pass that belt up. I passed it off to my first squire who got knighted, who was Renar. And it was hard for me to let go because it meant a lot to me. And then the chain that I got was from Gunther, who he had got his chain from Rorik. So he took that chain and he split it in half. This is that chain. He took that chain, he split it in half, and we completed both halves. He got half and I got half. And we've continued that tradition for many of the people, for all of our squires and all of our households, so that there's always a piece of Rorik's chain going to everyone from us going forward. So
that is super cool. I love that.
Yeah, this kind of thing is important, I think, in the SCA, the lineage stuff.
I do too, definitely.
we can speak to those lineages. It's yeah, it gets me chokes me up a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, it is hard. Like I have a belt that I haven't let go of my knighting belt yet, and I was knighted in 2003, but I am going to let go of it this year. Well, if we have an event. But but when you do let go of it, it's just so meaningful, right?
Absolutely. And I've seen it go from a couple guys to a couple, like I've got from guy to guy in Avacal. It's still in here. I'm not actually sure who has it right now. But I know it's around, and every time I see it, I see the turtle on the end of it. And that's my belt.
So for those of you that don't know, the turtle is sort of Groa's, it's not her device, but it's sort of her thing. Like she identifies with it. So that's super cool that she did that for you. I love it when people imbue meaning into things like that, because you know, then the next person that gets it, they have this story, right? It's
absolutely
cool. Anyway, super cool. So at that point in time, you hadn't won a coronet yet, right?
Nope.
Okay, so was there a point in time where were you fighting coronets as a squire?
I was. I didn't learn, like winning tournaments in my head is a learned skill. So I was still on the path of trying to figure out how to get through my own mental mazes to find my way to the other side of that. So it really wasn't until I had a good reason to win that I managed to win. And I decided I was going to start actually training for these kinds of things. I mean, I would practice and that kind of stuff, but like physically training a little bit, getting in better shape, eating better, sleeping better, that kind of stuff in preparation for this. So yeah, there was one year that I decided I was going to win, or at least I was going to do my best. And I trained, and I did everything I could. And we got to the event that this was going to be my day. And everybody at the gate received the news that the event didn't make it into our newsletter in time. And so it couldn't be a real event. And so we colloquially called this Coronet, because it was Coronet. It was the Coronet that didn't happen. So we had a tournament that I won that day. And I got a great box out of it, a super neat sort of chest looking box. And we had a great time. But that was, we didn't do that. So that was how that went. I did manage to win the actual Coronet that followed it. So it turned out well. I like training helps, and visualization helps, and practice helps. And yeah, that's how it sort of went. But I fought in some coronets that I tried to win, but it wasn't until I had someone that I wanted to put on the throne until I really actually figured out how to get through that stuff.
So that's like something that I totally geek on, is like how people train themselves to sort of get to their no mind place, or their place where they can like leave all their baggage behind and actually just fight and bring their best fight. So besides meeting your wife and having that inspiration, because that is huge. I mean, having somebody that you want to share that experience with, and that you trust to share that experience with, is a really big sort of confidence thing, I think. But besides that, what else did you do?
It really was a visualization exercise of not worrying about the thing that's happening, not planning ahead, not making sure, I don't know, not worrying about the future or the past. It really is what's the task in front of me, and how do I execute? Okay, I know that guy. This is how he fights. Okay, let me visualize how these things might go a little bit. But honestly, it really is go out there and fight my best fight. And I wish I could tell you the process that it goes on in my head, but it really is the pressure plays a role. I don't know if I would fight as well if these tournaments were sort of bear pit style, Sweet 16. I do okay in those as well, but I really perform well under the pressure. It helps solidify my that little bit of fear. You know, what if I make a mistake? That kind of thing. I just over time have learned to sort of banish those doubts, but still use the excitement and the fear to sort of hone my focus a little bit. I'd like to take more classes on how people get to this place. It's a place that I just came to learning how to do this. I wish I could explain better, but that's really
I think it's a hard thing to explain. If it was easy, it wouldn't be such an interesting topic.
Certainly, yeah. If there was just an ABC to it, then
Right.
then there it is.
Do you have like a tourney day sort of ritual or a trigger that you use to get yourself focused?
I like to get a good sleep the night before, which as a young guy that liked to have a lot of fun in the SCA, that was difficult because I like a good time. I like to hang out with my buddies, but I knew that we were all sort of taking these tournaments seriously when the Friday nights got like quieter and quieter, and the young guys were still out there howling it up and doing their thing, but the ones that were taking it seriously were, going. But I remember that coronet that I won the night before. We used to be able to sleep in the castle at Quadwar. This term was held at the Quadwar site where we have this castle. And so you could rent out the rooms in the castle, which it was a bit of a dusty and, kind of a drafty affair, but it was neat. And so I thought I would treat myself to that. And I remember all of my jughead buddies crawling up to the top of because you could sleep in the room. Of course, there was a battlement at the top, and they were at the top howling and doing their thing. And I went up there and I tore a strip off of them. Like, I'm trying to sleep here. My family's down here trying to sleep. What is wrong with you guys? And they were like, oh, okay. Like it was, oh, it looks like Ivar serious about tomorrow. Okay, never. Yep. Sorry. And I thought, oh, I guess who even am I? Because 5 years ago, that was me. So yeah, the pre-fight ritual or the tourney day ritual isn't really much more than decent breakfast, good night's sleep, visualization, calm, try not to get too excited about anything. And then before I fight, I have a little TikTok-y thing that I do, to set myself ready for the fight. And then that's it.
What do you mean the TikTok-y thing?
I touch kind of both my knees and I touch my shoulders and I flex to make sure that the armor's all working correctly. And it's just it's become a bit of a thing. I kind of take a deep breath through the nose to make sure that everything's clear. And then that all sort of seems to help dial my focus in a little bit.
Yeah, I would call that a trigger. Like it's a physical thing you do that puts you in the right place, right?
Yep.
I've done a lot of reading on this stuff, so like that's what the experts would call a trigger.
Fair enough. Yeah, it really is. And every now and again, I realize, oh shit, that shoulder is wrong, right? So then I got to stop and okay, I got to fix this because when I tap it, oh, I hit my bone. That's not right. Okay, something slid. So it's it's a bit of a a trigger for sure. That makes sense.
What role does Asni play on tourney day for you?
Oh, she's integral to the entire thing. She's very, very good at understanding what she needs to do for me and when I need to be left alone. There's a lot of leave me alone for now. I don't need to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. There are times when I don't want to talk to anybody. If I have to, if I had a bad fight and I got to kick it over in my head, she knows enough to sort of play some interference. She knows enough to tell me if that guy is let's say I'm fighting a squire or a man of arms or something like that. She knows enough to say respect that one, like because every now and again I have a terrible flaw that I'm trying to figure. I like to fight around the skill level of my opponent, and it's an unconscious thing that I fought for years and years and years, and I'm still wrestling with it. I don't like to go out and murder a guy. It's not really my thing.
Practice to be a good knight, right? Like you're supposed to fight at the level or a little bit above your opponent. Right. So you have to get yourself out of that for tourney.
Exactly. And so she knows enough to say, and we've nailed it down to just the word respect. Like respect that guy's skill. Don't and just understand where you're going with it. So it's caught me a couple times. Oh yeah, okay, shake. And we can still have a good fight if I don't have to go and absolutely pound you to the ground. But it's a mindset thing for me. And she helps settle me in all the ways that I've found that I get unsettled. I don't know that I could do any of this without, I mean, there's the inspiration aspect and the belief, in your partner and that kind of thing. But there really is she's my Burgess Meredith in the background. You're a bum rock. That whole kind of, that maybe not quite so harsh, but in my mind a little bit.
Cool. That's super cool. So did you guys do one cornet?
We just one and done, frankly. We had a couple struggles with that ring. it was an excellent experience. We had a great time. We also got married that year. So the week before my wedding, I wasn't planning my wedding. I was managing some things that needed to get managed at 2 a.m, the Tuesday before the Saturday. And I thought, oh geez. So it took a lot out of us. It was fun, but we didn't really feel the need to do it right away. And then we had a family not too much longer after that. I decided to go back to school. So other things became more important. I never really fought in earnest in another one ever again, frankly. Mostly because we took a bit of a break after a while. When our kids started to show up and they were babies, it was hard. SE was just hard.
I can totally relate to that.
I don't understand how people do it. I take my hat off to them, honestly. We just found it wasn't as fun. We couldn't do the things that we wanted to do, and we just thought, let's take and we walked away from it. Not I quit, but we just found other things to kind of do. So I don't know that I'd ever be back again, if not for one of my current squires who I happened to run into. He was going to fix my hot tub. I moved back down to Regina, where I'm living now. And when I left, there was no fight practice here at all. The fighting practice had dried up. And he showed up, and it turned out we got to talking, and SCA, okay, well, I know what that is. And so we got to talking, and he said, you should come to practice. We've got 15 guys out here. And I thought, what? Wow. So I'd missed the fighting the whole time. And so I thought, okay, I'll put my arm around, I'll beat these newbies up a little bit, make myself feel better, and walk away. And I came out, and they were good. Like they've been doing the same thing that we were doing. They had some mentors down here, and they were edging them. And so I had a great time, and just sort of fell in love with the whole thing all over again. Couldn't get away from the fighting. And then here we are.
That's super cool. I knew you took some time off for family and to go back to school. And I think that's healthy. I mean, and then you can come back and your passion is rekindled, right?
We have more money now. So, because school is important for that kind of thing. So
older, and yeah. I totally get that. I mean, when my kid was no longer a baby, but she was not old enough to entertain herself, that is like the hardest period of time, because nobody really wants to help you anymore because it's not a cute baby.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Oh, let me take your baby. Like, right. Oh, you're toddler. You're good.
Yeah. The toddler's all you. But will you tell me, like, what was your favorite part of reigning as prince?
I really liked the pageantry of it. I was a very shy kid. I owe the SCA a lot in the person that I've become. So as prince, it was my first real opportunity to address crowds and to try to invoke emotion in people in the speeches that I would make and that kind of thing. So that really was my favorite part. I mean, I love giving people their AOAs and that kind of stuff. That was amazing for me. There's nothing like the spark in someone's eye when they're not expecting their AOA, and so that's one of the things you get to do as prince, and it was wonderful. But I really enjoyed the court aspects of it, and the how can I portray this role, because suddenly my role is much bigger, and people are looking towards me for leadership and that kind of thing. But so really, how can I give them what they want? How can I invoke emotion and loyalty and patriotism and that kind of thing in people? And so that was fun.
Cool. So what kind of trainer are you? How do you train your squires?
I like to think I'm a pretty good trainer. I've got a couple of guys that have made it to count, but honestly, those guys made it to this is Wernar and Krieger. I didn't train them how to fight. I cherry picked those squires. They were good well before they ever showed up to me. I'm not a Duke Sean. I want that ability, the Duke Sean's ability to train people. And that's, I've gone to him for some mentorship in my age, I guess, if you want to call it, like as a mature knight, as to how to train people. And also he's helped me a little bit with my crown fighting and my higher level fighting. But really, I train my squires very differently. Like every squire is a little different, and they need different things. With some guys, it's physical, and I need to show you where to put your feet and how to swing your sword and how to generate power. And other guys, it's confidence, and they believe in yourself and believe what you can do out there, and respect your own abilities, because you have every much right to this fight as that person does. And so some people it's mental, other people it's just, hey, can I hop in with you and go to Crown with you? Yep, let's go. Sometimes it's just giving them a nudge that way. With one of my guys, he's the guy that got me back into the SCA. It's really just, let me show you all of the fun parts of the SCA, because he really has been a sort of a fringe player in the SCA for years and years, but is an excellent fighter. He was the guy that came in second at Sport Kings just last time. Yeah. The spear guy, big moment for me. I really enjoyed every minute of it. I was terrified he was going to win, because I didn't think there was enough room on the plane for him and his ego if he won that tournament. But he came out of that just ear to ear grinning. He absolutely loved the experience, and he was so looking forward to going to Golf Wars with us, and then it didn't happen. So here we are.
He would have had to worn that cloak on the plane too, because it was so heavy.
Yeah, no doubt. He'd have worn it happily though. Big ear to ear grin. He'd have been all over it.
Yeah, he fought really beautifully. I have to tell you, Kviger is one of my favorite people from up there. We went up there once, and he was Prince, and he was fantastic. So whatever, I mean, I know you said that you sort of cherry picked them, but you did a great job with him. Fantastic.
That guy showed up at practice, and I knew the first day he showed up, he was going to be great. I caught him off on the side. He was fiddling with some tape, and I said, what are you doing? He says, well, I really like this, and I got all these blisters on my hand. I tore all my blips, so I got to tape them up. And I'm like, oh, here we go. It's nothing but heart. He's my favorite person in the world to watch fight. He's dynamic, and he's smart, and he's fast, and yeah, he's I quite like him. I'm quite fond of the feller.
Yeah, me too. So when you came back, was Avacal already a kingdom?
Yes, I missed all of the bid for Kingdom. We were gone for that whole thing, but you can take the guy out of the SCA, but you can't really take the SCA out of the guy. I recall sitting at the dinner table at a family function, hitting refresh on the Facebook page about the first Crown tournament, because I was desperate to know who was going to win. So I really had no part of the SCA at that time, but I still needed to know who was going to be the first king. So it all turned out really well, and Albert was a spectacular king. That guy, and we came back to the SCA quite shortly after that to catch most of his first reign, and he and Nishida did an incredible job at getting to every little nook and cranny of this kingdom to bring this excitement of this new thing. So it was really spectacular to watch. One of my biggest regrets is not fighting in that tournament, because I understand it to have been an excellent day. So
apparently it was super cold, but yeah. So when did you decide that you weren't just going to play around coming back with the fighting, but you were going to be serious and go for Crown?
Well, I love fighting Crown. Fighting Crown is my favorite thing to do in the SCA. I absolutely love the double elimination Crown tournament format. I just live for it. So I always wanted to fight Crown. The first Crown I fought on when I was back, I was hoping to a couple of unbelts, and I thought, maybe this isn't for me anymore. I don't know, man. Like I didn't have my tournament head in at all figured out. I had glory days past that I was reliving, and yeah, didn't respect those guys. And honestly, they fought well. I don't want to take anything from them. The one guy went 6 or 7 rounds as a squire. They did a great job. So that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. Maybe I better take this more seriously if I'm not going to embarrass myself out here. But it really was a thing where I looked around at my bank account, my life, the person that I wanted to come with me on the throne, my wife, obviously, and everything seemed to sort of fit. So it said, okay, well, maybe it's time to start taking this more seriously. And then we get back to getting in shape, doing the best you can for getting to travel as often as you can to try to experience all the different fighters. And lots of the guys, honestly, since I came back, there was a lot of guys that forgot how I fight. So it was it was a bit of a tricky, like, I forgot about that shot. It fell out of fashion, did it? Okay, well, I still throw it. So here we are. So there was lots of that going on.
New again.
Yeah, exactly. I had made up my mind to try to win the one that Kviger won. And he had never beat me in a tournament in his whole career. And he burned through me so hard in that, like it was my last, I think, yeah, he was my last loss. And I thought, what just happened? He hit me so many times before I could finally die. And wait, because I had a plan to fight him, and that was part of my problem because he shouldn't really make a plan in my head. But I had a plan. I knew what I was going to do. I knew he was faster than me, so I was going to leg him and run away. And the first thing he did was he ran out and legged me. And I was so angry at him for legging me that I hit him probably too hard in the leg back. And then he realized, oh, it's go time. And so he hit me 1,000 more times, and I fell over dead. And he came to me later on that day. He said, "You were pretty mad about that leg shot, weren't you?" And I said, "Well, why do you ask?" He giant bruise on his leg. And I thought, dude, I'm sorry. I sort of took over, and I had a plan. You broke it, and I was like, ah. So yeah, that was the first one that I really wanted to win, and it was the first one that people started to go, oh, that guy's still around, I guess. Okay, maybe he's a bit, because that was in the quarterfinals or semifinals or somewhere. So yeah, it wasn't that long after where I decided that, okay, I better figure this out. I've never won a crown tournament. It's a bigger deal in my head. So yeah, it was training and practice and visualization and all the good stuff. And I have an excellent crew of fighters down here that keep me honest and make sure that I'm working hard at practice and that kind of stuff. So I've got my own sort of training regimen with those guys to try to not make it all about me, but also fun for them. And so it's a whole kind of regimen that we do down here. So
how many practices a week do you guys have down there?
We have 2. Back when we could have practices, and I would get to as many as I could. Not always get them to both, but at my peak, I would try to hit practice here twice a week, and then there's a practice that Gunther hosts that's 2 hours north of me that I would also try to get to. But that's a tough one on Monday nights when you got to work on Tuesday, so that's a bit of a long drive. But every night he will hold it once a month, so that was we try to get up there for that. But yeah, try to practice as often as my body will allow, and because I'm 47 now, so that's not old by any stretch, but it's not mileage.
It's anymore.
30 years of SCA fighting has not done my body any favors.
So you've reigned twice now in Avacal. And this reign has been a little different because you guys stepped up and then boom, nothing. You don't get to do anything. Global pandemic.
Right.
But let's talk about your first reign. What was your favorite part about that reign?
It's there's so many. There's so many parts. I had a speech in my head that I wanted to execute, and it was a part of my visualization routine. If I was ever going to make it to the finals at Crown Tournament, the typical thing is you find a herald, he speaks about your great prowess and yada yada yada, and then lots of times the queen is kind of thrown in, or the future queen is thrown as an afterthought. Oh, it is beautiful inspiration, right? That never ever sat well with me. So I've never been very good at letting other people speak for me. So I waved off my herald, and I extolled the virtues of my inspiration and what an amazing queen she was going to be. And so that wasn't part of my reign, but it was a fun time for me. It was good to be able to say, I'll do my best up here, and you'll get what you get, but you're in for one hell of a queen should the day be mine. And the fact that I fought Gunther in the finals was a big deal for me, so that was super fun. In the reign itself, like I say in the SCA, I got squired, I got knighted, and I went to Pennsic as king. And those were like my top 3. So we went to Pennsic that year, and we were lucky enough that we had a lot of people go with us. It's the biggest Avacalian contingent ever to go to Pennsic. When we walked in through the great court, the grand procession, over and over again, I heard, look how many of them there are. Like, holy cow. So there was 20 or 30 of us. There was a lot of us there. And lots of really close friends. Like Gunther came to us. Gunther was our champion at the time. So that was a big deal for us. And much of our household came with us, and people who I didn't expect to come came with us. And it was absolutely wonderful. There was a moment at that Pennsic that makes me laugh. I'm a big fan of Ragnvalder. I love watching that guy fight. And so it was during the Heroic Champions tourney at that event where the royalty was sat way back. Like the fighters were way over here and the royalty were all sort of arrayed back here. And you could see that there was a fight going on, but you couldn't see the fine details. And so out comes Ragnvalder in his nondescript blue tunic and his regular helmet and his oval shield. Like, I know that guy. I like that guy. I want to get a better look. And so Asni says, well, you're king. Just go get a better look. Do what you want. I said, well, she says, yeah, go. And so I looked over at the king of Eldamir, who was Baldric, Lehman at the time. And he said, I said, let's go. That's Ragnvalder. I want to go get a better look. He says, well, can we do that? I said, we're king. We can absolutely do that. And so we ran way up there and we fanboyed over Ragnvalder and the fellow that he was going to fight, who I don't actually know. And then I got a couple pictures actually. Just one. So we had the two of us ran up there to go look, and then all of the other kings came running in, and then a bunch of knights came. Sort of like, this is a picture of one of the knights sort of sliding in to that.
Nice.
To that thing, and so there was a bunch of us just kind of fanboying over what we knew was going to be an excellent fight. And I mean, every king at heart or every crown winner at heart is a fighter, and all we care about is the good fight. And so Ragnvalder stopped and he looked, and this gaggle of kings came sliding in to fanboy over him, and he kind of looked at us and we said, okay, carry on, and he laughed, he chuckled, and they had an excellent fight, and so we had a good time. It was that entire event was memorable. It will be one of the things that I take with me to the ends of the earth. It was wonderful. I absolutely hold that up as the best thing I've ever done as king in event-wise. It was wonderful.
That's super cool. And he is, I mean, not only is he a great fighter, he's a great teacher.
He came to Avacal to do a fighting seminar. I had no idea who he was. And I wish I knew who he was, because I would have paid a lot closer attention in his class. But I fought him the next day. And I've been fighting and training pretty good. I'm doing all right in my fighting. I'm probably a better fighter than I've ever been. And I fought him 10 times and he beat me 10 times. And I didn't hit him. Whenever I hit him in the boss, like the boss of his shield. So I wasn't missing by inches. I was missing by feet. And I thought, what is happening here? And he just managed to fight like he does. And he almost looked like he was bored. And so I thought, okay, I got to know more, right? And so we struck up conversation, and he taught me a thing or two. One of the things he said was, you're not fighting these guys anymore. You're fighting a different caliber. So it's just like you're a squire again, and you just got to fight the higher caliber guys in a different way. So don't fight me as a young man. You're smarter than that. Fight me as a veteran. And it really, like every minute I get the chance to have a conversation with that guy, it really is. There's more gems that are mined, and I've got massive amounts of respect for the guy. Absolutely.
Inga told me a really funny story about when he came up to teach there. Like, I guess he left his cell phone in his pocket or something, and he was like all nonchalant about it. And he's like, I guess fighting Kviger, and like Kviger's like bouncing off of him or whatever. And then he's like, oh, my phone. Like nobody,
like, come on, man.
Nobody was gonna touch it anyway. Anyway, I just thought that was like so classic.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I wanted to go back though to you extolling the virtues of Asni when you did your introduction, because I think that is so cool. I've always wanted somebody not just to do that, but like to have a tournament where instead of saying, here's Ivar the Black, versus Kviger, it's like the fighter fighting for her grace Asni, like take the fighter out of it and make it about the inspiration, because really that's like how the SDA started, right? So I love that you did that. I think that is awesome. I mean, not only is your wife awesome, but it was awesome of you to do that.
It was actually an honor and a pleasure, and I never. What are you pointing at? Oh, okay. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
I love that. That's great. So besides Duke Sean, do you have any other mentors right now?
Right now, it really is just the gang of guys down here. They're helping me in ways. I mean, I'm the probably the highest level skilled fighter in my area, but they're teaching me things every day. I try to have interesting fights with them. I try to hollow myself in ways that make me stretch and that kind of thing. But honestly, there isn't really anyone that I'm outside of Duke Sean. I mean, when I won my second crown, Duke Sean was very, very gracious and said, I watched the tape and, good, congratulations, way to go. Oh, you'll have my analysis on Monday. Like it really was, and he was not gentle. Like, here's all the things that you did wrong, which is exactly the kind of thing I need. I'm absolutely happy I'm honored that he would do that. But it really is a thing, getting taken down a notch, having just one crown. Oh, I did that. Oh, I didn't realize I did that too. Oh, damn it. I'll have to fix that.
He let you savor it on Sunday.
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah, very nice of him.
What is your favorite tradition in Avacal?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't know that there is a specific one. I very much like how we get together at events and really are we're so small and everybody knows everybody. I don't think I have an actual specific Avacalian tradition. That's a tough question. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
It is very I'm not like family, but it's very colloquial up there. Everybody knows each other, and it just feels friendlier, I guess. And I don't know if that's because it's smaller than what I'm used to or what, but
everybody knows everybody. So it's a bit like a small town. So that's a bit of a two-edged sword at times because everyone knows everyone's business a little bit. But that's the kingdom we have.
So if somebody was going to visit to Avacal, which event, like what's the signature Avacal event that they should go visit?
They got to come to Quad War. That's our big one. That's our it's central to the three baronies, or as central as it sort of can be made. So it draws the most people. It really is a thing where God help us if that's the first event that we get to go to. It's supposed to happen this weekend. It's not going to, or maybe the weekend after. Well, it's whatever it is.
It all runs together right now.
It sure does. So if we don't get to go to events for another year, and if that's the first one, it'll be a gong show. It'll be enormous because everyone's going to want to come out. But that's sort of the most fun, I think. It shows lots of the good aspects of Avacal, right? We've got an excellent little sort of medieval village set up there, and so it's really neat. The Merchant's Row is super fun. It's very medievally, like lots of sort of Tudor style houses set up and that kind of stuff. So it's and then there's some excellent parties that happen at that event. So it really is it's a good thing to come to. That or any crowd. But honestly, like we use that event site so much that if it's not Quad War, it's something else at that site. It really is it's a mere 5-hour drive for us, and that's a bit of a treat because we don't get to go to sort of larger events. It's usually about 8 hours. It's 8 hours to Calgary. It's 8 hours to Edmonton. It's 25 hours to Vancouver, frankly. So it's difficult to get out to places, but that's 5 hours is an easy drive for us. And so it's the one that draws the most folks out for sure.
Cool. Who is the person that you love to watch fight the most?
I think it'd have to be Krieger. I really like how, like, when he's on, he's an absolute joy to watch. But if I go back so Rourke came to Pennsic with us when we were King and Queen, which was a surprise for me because he's been coming out to the SCA a little bit. I used to love watching that guy fight. He was like a surgeon out there doing what he did. So he fought in the 15 over tournament at Pennsic and just cut through every guy like they were standing still. And so this happened to be the Wednesday on War Week at Pennsic, which is that day was the day that all the kings were coming out to fight in pickups. Really fun day, really excellent day. And I had to stop that. Like, as fun as that was, someone told me Rourke's in the finals of this other tournament. It's been too many years since I've got to see that guy win a tournament. So I ran over and watched that, and then I went back and followed the other king. So, if I could pick anyone in any time period, it would be Rourke, because it was so much fun to fight and so much fun to watch. And yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So you have an armory too, right?
I do, of a sort. it's it's a bit of a niche market. I do all kinds of plastic stuff and that kind of stuff. I've got a vacuum forming rig set up here, and it was a thing that I figured out years ago, and I put myself through school, making plastic armor and selling it to anyone who would buy it. So yeah, it's armor meant to sort of be hidden under cloth or clothing and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's what I use, and I quite like it. So.
And you make basket hilts, right?
I sure do. I've got one right here. When we get to my sword, you'll see it.
Oh, let's look at your sword. Unless there's something that I haven't covered that you would like to talk about.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we got it all figured out.
Okay, let's look at your sword then.
Sure. Well, so this is kind of a practice sword because it's not taped up very well. I'll just get up and kind of show you a little closer. That's the style of basket hilt I make, and I like them. They give me a lot of room that I need. The way I make the sword, the handle is well, I'll show you the handle on the other sword that I've got. It's a little easier to see, but I like it. You're sort of skinnier at the top and wider at the bottom. I like a fatter grip near my pinky. Always tape the basket hilt on there, never with clamps because clamps break.
Is that just hockey tape? Do you not like take the strapping tape and make it into a rope or whatever?
I turn the hockey tape into a rope.
Okay.
And I like the look of it a little better, and I don't know, it's
better.
I change it up a little bit. I'm always kind of changing the way I do things and how I make the stuff. I envy the guys that have found the way they make their sword and they just make it. I've got that in my head, but I always like to change it up a little bit. Not before crown or anything like that, but at practice, it's always an evolving thing. My triggers evolved quite a lot over the years to accommodate sort of different injuries and different styles, different fighting techniques, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so the rest of it is just sort of strapping tape and duct tape. I've got a sort of certain way I like to make my thrusting tips. Always with a thrusting tip for me. I like to keep the A-frame guys honest, frankly, and I find a good offside body thrust makes them think twice a little bit. So that's a thing for me. I like to use it more of a threat than as an offensive weapon, but any threat's got to be real. So that's how that works for me.
Well, don't buy that, people, because I fought him and it's a real threat.
Yeah, it's
he's got a good thrust.
It turns out okay. Every now and again, it comes out. So yeah, there's not really much to it. I like them about 3 feet, 36 inches is kind of my sweet spot, plus the thrusting tip. So 37, depending on what I'm trying to do with it that day. If I'm trying to make it longer or shorter, because I'll play with them. I'll play around with it. I like the heft of it more than the length of it, I guess. But yeah, I have like my standard tourney sword, 36 inches, thrusting tip, plastic basket hilt. Yeah,
is it not much really to it. Is it planed or is it just round?
It's always planed.
Okay.
Planed on 6 parts, right? Planed on the sides and then all the corners to make it nice and round. I like them oval. They feel better for some reason, and maybe that's in my head, but that's just as important as if it's not. So yeah, there's a very specific planing process. I love making swords. If I could get paid to just make swords, I think I would. Right? I like I've got a power planer that I use and a whole process, and I like to swing it around. And this one doesn't want to be 36 inches. This one wants to be 35. Right? That kind of stuff.
You
right?
can tell.
That. Yep, you can tell. They kind of speak to you. One of the things that I've done recently is I use you can't really see it, but I use tennis racket tape on my handles. It's a little cushier. It's sweat absorbent, which is a huge thing for me. I used to fight with just the raw rattan, and this is just better for me. It doesn't raise the blisters quite as much. Maybe you get your calluses and that kind of stuff, but yeah, it feels better. It's grippy without being sticky, and but the sweat kind of it's good. I like it.
I'm gonna have to try that because Uther I think is the one that I first heard that from, and I'm like, I gotta try that, and I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I find it's inexpensive, and I will never make another sword or shield without tennis racket tape on the handle. Just the sweat management alone is worth it for me.
So let's see the triggers without the basket hilt.
Yeah, this is kind of a training sword that I use, just because if you're trying to teach things like loose hand and that kind of stuff, people don't really see the basket hilt. So the trigger is I call it a wrist trigger. It's more like a lanyard. I'll show you. So I go up and in. So I can see if I can kind of,
Yes.
it swings like this. And so I do a lot of blade manipulation in mid fight, right? So if I'm throwing an upside down sort of shot like that, I want to make sure that I can move the sword around, and this trigger lets me do that. It gives me more of another torque point, I guess, another rotation point. So it's not quite so hard on my wrist or my elbow or my shoulder. And even though you're not supposed to be throwing with that stuff, sometimes every now and again, the fight kind of happens in a weird way. So I find it like it's a little bit easier on the wrap for me. And it lets me let go and be really loose handed with it. I found that with the finger trigger, it was tugging on these fingers a little bit too much, and they were getting a little bit, misaligned. Maybe I was using it too much or something, but this just lets me, this kind of thing lets me do all the fancy things that I want to do.
Yeah, I like that. I don't think I've ever seen someone strap it that way. It's interesting.
Yeah, it allows me to throw a weird, I can flip the sword upside down.
Yeah, it's almost like you're using a D-ring, but you're not. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's what's funny, one of my squires who plays very, very little, he's in Calgary now. He had the tennis racket tape, and I used to mock him for it, and then I picked it up, and then yeah, exactly. And then a friend of mine, Gan, from who used to be from Murray Wood and now is in Eldemere, he had this wrist trigger, and I used to mock him for it. And he's the one that figured it out, and now I'm a big fan. So maybe I should stop mocking people. And
well, that's why I like to look at people's stuff, because you never know that there's something better that's going to work for you better until you try it and you see what someone else is using. So
yeah, it's funny how this simple ritual of building a sword and trying to play around with it is such a big deal, and there's so many little intricacies you can do, and I mean every one of them is different. Like if you've ever seen Albert's sword, it's like an alien built a sword and wanted to build, like it is the most foreign thing to try to hold. It's horrid, but yeah, he absolutely loves it, right?
Yeah, he showed it to us, and I was like, what?
He's got scoops out here, and he uses a grinder, and he does a thing, and yeah, like it's got big. Yeah,
it looks like an hourglass, kind of.
I tried to pick it up, and it was like, ugh.
So someone wants to know how much your basket hilts are. So why don't you tell us how much they are, and why don't you plug your website?
Oh, sure. So I run a website called plasticsmitharmory.com, and you can spell armory any way you like it, whether the Canadian version or the American version. I got them both there. Basket hilts I sell for $25 US on there. Most of my customers are from the States, so all my prices are in US dollars. Yeah, and I do basket hilts, and I do elbow cops and shoulders, and I'm trying to build up more stuff. I really love the process of thinking about how a person moves when they fight, and how to build that armor to make that better. I don't have a lot of skill and talent as an aesthetic armorer. I don't work metal very well. I do some leather work that does okay. But this stuff hidden is I spend a lot of time thinking, is this good, and will it work well, and will it move well, and will it bind when they do this, and I've got 30 odd years of fighting experience, and so I use that in my process, and that process it gets me up in the morning. This is a hobby business for me, but it really is quite fun.
Yeah, and a lot of us do use hidden stuff too. I mean, so it's all good.
Yep.
Great. So you ready for the final 10?
Oh, bring it on.
All right, let's do it. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
Branos. I've never fought him, and I hear great things. And so that whole Ragnvalder Branos, that whole style of fighting, that's what I want to try to figure out. I'm not there yet, but we've all got goals.
I think I want to go to Detroit just to go to their practice and get my
right. Yeah, it's worth the plane ticket. Absolutely. Once we can get there, we'll get there.
Yes.
We'll make a plan.
Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
I would like to see a fella named Rogan reign in our kingdom.
The skin peeler?
Rogan the skin peeler. Rogan Guntherson these days.
Okay.
Yeah, since he was knighted. He is
myself.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. He's a moderate fella. He's well thought. He's well spoken. Every time he types something on the internet, I find myself agreeing with him. I think he'd make an excellent king.
You say that about the internet, and I always love how he listens. Like, he asks questions, and he's not one of those people that doesn't want to have a discussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not just waiting for his turn to talk. He's
Yeah,
actually engaging and trying to. I mean, the internet's different. No one ever said, "Oh, now that I've read your Facebook comment, I've entirely changed my point of view." And I see, like, that's not Facebook's not really a place for that.
right.
But he tries, right? He's out there putting like moderate and interesting and well thought out points. And I'd like to see what that does in this role, because I think he'd do a lot of good for the kingdom.
I also love the woman he fights for. So
Astrid is one of my favorites.
yeah. All right. If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
I like to talk to Duke Sean. We have a lot of the same ideas. He gave me some essays to read, and I thought, oh, I do that, and I do that. No, I don't do that. I'll try that. He's one that thinks an awful lot about this sport, and I respect that an awful lot. So I'd like to never, ever miss one of his spring training sessions again. That barbecue thing that they were going to set up down there was going to be the big highlights. It was a week before I was supposed to step down, and I was still making plans to go before the world exploded. And yeah, it made me sad. But yeah, every time I can sit down and talk with that guy, it's time well spent.
Agreed. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Henry V.
Henry V.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. That guy was the way Kenneth Branagh portrayed him. He was a king that never once betrayed his own integrity. He did all the things that had to be done. He could rouse the crowd with a good speech, and he was a romantic fool at the end. And so I think it's everything a king should be. Excellent.
If you could add or subtract a rule to the rules of the list, what would it be?
I like them the way they are. I've been used to them for 30 years. I wouldn't mind throwing you shouldn't hit people with excessive force into the actual rules of the list, but honestly, that's all sort of implied anyway. So I think we're good.
So subjective too. I mean,
for sure.
What is your favorite tournament format?
I love me a crown tournament, double elimination. You can make one mistake if you're not on that game, and I've done a few that I've lost a fight in every crown I've ever won, and it served to wake me up and shake the rust out of it. And okay, let's put that in the past. It's a good little hump to get over, and then off you go. So yeah, I love a crown tournament. What's your favorite event? My favorite event to attend, I think, is Crown in general, because I just love it so much. Not necessarily to try to win it, although that's super fun, but just to watch the fighters go through their process and the tension in the air and who's going to be the next ruler and all of that stuff. I love the energy. But like the specific event that I love has got to be Pennsic 2018. It was amazing. That's cool. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be, and who would make it? Well, I've got a good story about my first nice helmet, and I got it right here actually. I think nice helmet. This old beater of a helmet now. It's all dented up. It shouldn't ever be fought in again, frankly. This helmet was commissioned by my lovely wife. Mr. Vic Vikingson made it for me, and he gave it to me in the finals of the first Coronet tournament that he and I ever met in the finals, and the only one, I guess. And so his speech was that helmet, and I'd never seen it. I knew there was a helmet coming. I didn't know when. And so there's you probably can't quite see it, but around the oculars, there's little runes all stamped in there. And that's a passage from Beowulf that talks about the helmet made of twisted wire and how it will protect the wearer. And so he's translating these runes, and he looks at me and he says, "But not today, not today." And he proceeded to beat me two straight because I had just seen the most beautiful helmet I'd ever seen in my life. So I'd like to fight in that helmet again one day, if I could clean it up and figure all that stuff out. The helmet that I've got now is gorgeous. It's an Acer. He and I talked about it, and my thing is the bores. So he did bores on the faceplate for me, and he did bores in the cheeks, and yeah, it's kind of beat up and rusty right now with the oxidization, but yeah, I quite like this helmet.
Can you show the top? I love the woven part.
I can, yeah. This whole Valsgard
So
5 style, yeah, it's all black and stainless. That guy does a fine job, and I'm really, really proud of it. But if I had to pick, if I could restore that helmet to its former glory, I think I probably would, because it meant a lot to me when he gave it to me, and yeah, that's what I would do.
Vic is so good at those speeches.
He did a fine job. He torpedoed my cornet tournament, frankly.
Yeah.
I've not quite forgiven him for it yet, but I got to get a helmet out of the deal, so that's important.
Yeah. It's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
I probably told the story, and they probably want to know if it was true. Because I do like to tell stories around the fire, and I've got a bunch of them. There's an excellent story that one day I'll tell you about Vic sleeping in my tub. But this morning I went to my parents' house to have coffee, and my dad said, "So who's the next guy? Who's the next guy going to be?" I said, "Hey, Dad, you remember the guy that you kicked out of our bathtub back when we were kids? That guy's going to be the next king." He said, "Oh, it's good to see that he's done something with his life." Yeah, there's an awful lot of good stories from us back in the day. So it was probably a story around the fire, and they wanted to know, is that actually true, or is that all just bull?
Very cool. All right. Who is your favorite fight ever?
It's got to be Rourke.
Right.
That guy had a gift of dragging the absolute every best ounce of fight I had in me. If I could fight everybody like I fought Rourke, I'd be king a lot more times than twice. He just had a gift for bringing it out of me. Yeah, that's my guy.
Super cool. And then the bonus question is, who is the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
I think I'd have to say Vic. Vic honestly is a guy where like there's never been a fight that I thought, I don't know about that, right? Like there's never even been a shot that I thought, no. Every time that it's not that he dies to light, easy shots. It's just that the shots that hit him, he dies to. They're clean. They're good. He falls over. But honestly, he's a super fun fight. And so, yeah, I'd have to say it would have to be Vic.
Yeah. One thing I really admire about him is he can, if somebody doesn't like what he threw, he can just dial it up just a little bit more, and then just a little bit more.
No problem.
Yeah, he's so good at that. Anyway,
he hit me so hard once in the armpit that my nose stuffed up. I'll never forget. It was at a demo. And he did his like thing where he flips with the plows, and I bought the fake, and I was doing a big heroic block, and he blasted me in the armpit, and my nose got stuffy immediately, and I thought, that can't be good. Like, I don't know what happened there, but there's some glands or something that went sideways, and yeah, it was not good. I had to take a moment. Wow. And it was at a demo, so I couldn't be like, "Oh my God, ouch, that hurts." So I had to
play it off,
limp off, and say, "It's not good."
Well, I just want to say I've really enjoyed talking to you, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this while you're sitting. It's been really fun and really interesting. So thank you.
Well, it was absolutely my pleasure. It's fun to go down the memory lane stuff. It's fun to talk about, processes and that kind of stuff. I think it's really important. So I think it's a really cool thing you're doing. I'm going to go back and watch a bunch more of them, because I'm interested in seeing the answers to all of these questions that I've had to think so hard about. So,
well, I feel bad for you that you didn't have your armor at the event that you're put on vigil at, because if I remember correctly, like Jade and Uther came up for that, and it was quite the event. And that
it was a wonderful time. I don't regret a bit of it. Honestly, it was so much fun. We had a great time.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Tomorrow I'm talking to Duke Miles, and he should be a kick. There should be a not safe for work warning with him, but we should. So thanks everyone. Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, Asni. Bye.